It's tough to see how Ariel has changed over the years that I've been watching him cover the sport. I used to be a guy that would love tuning in to watch the nose break down the sport, or even, I'll even say beef with people. His beef with Brendan Schaub was infinitely entertaining. And potentially the weirdest beef, and I'll talk about it later in this video, I wouldn't put it past both these guys to be faking this. I think that's very much so a potential reality that we have to talk about. But one of the weirdest beefs in combat sports history, which is Chael P. Sonnen from Bad Guy Inc. versus Ariel Helwani from the MMA Hour. This all comes off of the heels of one of the greatest combat sports performances in history in terms of at least comebacks or underdog performances, let's just say. Francis went out there, shocked the world. Nobody was giving him a chance to succeed, and he went out and he did the thing. So I first off want to just tip my cap to him. Good job, Francis. Arguably winning a fight against one of the greatest boxers of all time. Say what you want. Say that Tyson Fury wasn't taking it seriously or anything else that you could potentially say. It is still the case that he looked really, really good, even against a Tyson Fury that I would wager was not at 100%. That in itself is absolutely astounding, but the fact that he was able to edge out what a lot of people thought should be a win for him, insane. Ariel, who's championed Francis Ngannou, has championed a ton of fighters, came on a show and gloated. This is not the first time he's done this, right? He's done it in a much more holistic way. I remember with Leon Edwards, he would have Rocky on the show all the time. Leon finally wins the title, and they have this touching moment together. And it's very nice the next day. This, of course, had a different vibe to it. It felt a little bit more ugly. It felt a little bit more personal. A lot of people take issue with a lot of different things in the video. I saw bits and fragments. A couple of things that I didn't like was how disrespectful he was being towards Chael. But again, that could be kayfabe. That could be something where Chael was like, hey, let's cut a promo here. Let's get something going. But of course, the side to it that can't really be faked is the we've done it side, which I think gives us a look into the psyche of Ariel Helwani and who he is as a guy. And not to make this all about me, because that's what I'm criticizing Ariel Helwani for in this video, but to give you a good example, I do MMA commentary and submission grappling commentary at currently the lowest level. The one thing we always have to keep in mind as parts of the media for the fight game, you ask Wade, he'll tell you, you ask Ariel, I'm sure he'd tell you, though he doesn't always follow this rule, and you'd ask anyone, right? Any commentator, any interviewer, any journalist that's in the sport, they'll tell you, you never make yourself the story. That's in all journalism, actually. You just don't ever, it's never a good idea to insert yourself into the story or make yourself the story. What your job is to add to the sport. And while you could argue that what Ariel has done has added to the sport here with giving the fans something to talk about, a little bit of controversy to Stu, it's a former fighter, they're both media members that bring so much to the sport, so getting more eyes on them from fans that might not necessarily watch them in the first place, I think is a really good thing. The plain and simple of the situation is still that, yeah, Ariel took away from Francis Ngannou's performance by making it about him, in a certain sense. Francis's next fight is not going to be for a while. Whether that's MMA, whether that's versus Deontay Wilder in boxing, whether it's going to the PFL, all these different factors, it's going to be a while until we see him compete again. And I don't think I'd be too boisterous in saying that Ariel kind of took away from the hype that was Ngannou arguably winning this fight with all of this controversy. It seems like this controversy has kind of eclipsed the event itself. I think Ariel is a guy that gives a lot to the sport, so I don't want to make this video, because I've seen a billion different videos like this calling him out, shit talking him, and what he is doing is quite stupid if it's not manufactured. If it is, it might be damn near one of the smartest things the scene has ever seen, but if it's not manufactured, it sure is dumb, but I don't think it makes him a bad guy. What I do think is he's been on this crash course now where it makes him money. It incentivizes him, right, to start beefs with these fighters. Jamal Hill, he goes back and forth with Brendan Schaub. He's had this beef with Paddy Pimblett, and it's done some of the best numbers for him because controversy, drama always sells. That's one of the backbones of fighting. Look, I don't even mind a more WWE style for the media, right, if they want to go at odds with the fighters every once in a while. That's not something that I necessarily would take issue with, but in the case of Ariel, it does seem like he's gotten a little bit too big for the seat of his pants. I think Ariel somehow has it in his head that he played an instrumental part in Francis Ngannou's winning or the cultivation of this fight. The truth is that Francis did his own thing, went through a little bit of controversy, and bet on himself and won. Just because you have a show, Ariel, that does numbers does not mean you were his biggest contributing factor to his success. There was hours, weeks, months put in the gym for this. Call it what you might, but you were another voice. Just the same as all these fans, all these detractors giving their takes, their opinions on the subject. I'd even argue that Ariel probably had the same weight as my voice. And don't get me wrong, Ariel's way more well-connected, way more famous, more popular than I am. But if you're talking about weight of voices, I guess what I'm trying to say is I need to see actionable proof that Ariel in some way helped Francis Ngannou get to where he is right now. Now, there's the other part of this where Ariel clearly has a bias towards the UFC due to what happened with him and Dana White all those years ago, and a lot of people take sides on that issue as well, but it's clear that there is a strong dislike for the UFC as a company, and also an actionable track record of Ariel doing things to spite Dana White and doing things to spite fighters that take Dana White's side. And I think that also muddies the waters significantly in terms of what he wants to put out to his fans, strictly that, regardless of the Francis situation, right? Because he's a journalist. At the end of the day, he's going to be reporting on things. Part of me does feel like he's operating with a bias. I guess the overarching theme of this video, through beefing with Chael, saying things that he would never say if Chael was in his face, to blatantly coping that he knew Francis was going to win somehow in some way, I would say that Ariel needs to remember where he came from. He is an MMA journalist at heart. Even if he becomes an MMA personality, I feel like the blending of the two is kind of where we get into a little bit of trouble. And I think that's what we're seeing on the screen right now. Without further ado, guys, it has been your boy, the combat consultant, the soundboard god, Jacob Kuberman. I'll see you in the next one.